All right, guys, how's it going? It's Day Daddy here. And as always, just want to start out by saying thank you for taking interest in my channel. And I really hope all the content provides useful for you. If it is, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button so I continue to grow and provide more quality content. Also, if you really enjoy the content, you might even consider buying me a coffee from a link in the video description below. Okay, now we got that out of the way. Let's get down to business today. And we're talking about Scapy. Specifically, this will be the first in a couple of videos about Scapy, about what it can do. This will specifically be the intro video, but the idea is to start out with some basics, then we'll go through and we'll hop into some commands on the command line, and then we'll start implementing them in Python so you can kind of make it a little bit more scalable. And then the idea is to end with a project actually implementing this, building a DNS forwarder, all with Scapy and Python. So that's kind of the goal here. Without further ado, let's get into the intro topic today. Okay, so what is Scapy? Scapy is a packet manipulation and creation tool, and it's built on Python or built with Python. So basically, it's a Python library, so it runs on Python and can be used as either a command line interface tool or it can be used as part of Python code. So both of those are useful in their own right. Command line tools maybe for smaller testing and probing, but making it part of Python code really allows you to kind of scale and build some really interesting stuff, kind of like the DNS forwarder that we'll build into. Okay, so the capabilities of Scapy. It's really meant for, these are at the most basic level, but you can send packets, you can sniff packets, you can create unique network packets, and then kind of dissect and decode packets. There's a ton of more stuff you can do. Those are kind of the four basic building blocks that you can use to do stuff like DNS cache poisoning, or launch man in the middle attacks, or all kinds of different attacks or injections you can do with Scapy. But those are kind of the four basic tools that build into those. Okay, so I think it's going to be helpful. This is going to be a pretty quick video, but I just want to go through a list of general commands that we'll be implementing in the next video. Just going to help to kind of go through them right now so we have an idea of what they are, what they're used for. So these are the general ones that'll help us a pretty good bit, but this is LSC, and this is going to list all of the commands that you have at your disposal. That one's super useful because the documentation is, I'm not going to lie, it's not the best for Scapy. So it's a little bit difficult sometimes to find the commands that you actually need. So this is really helpful, being able to list and see at least all the commands at your disposal, even if they may not always make the most sense. Okay, so this .show function, basically if there's a Scapy object and you add .show to the end of it, for 95% of the objects that I've tested, it will print out a pretty good detail, or in pretty good detail, what that object is and what the attributes of that object are. That's pretty useful. And then these are just kind of showing how .show works for the basic headers that you can manipulate within Scapy. So Ether, or the Ethernet header, the IP header, the TCP, UDP, ICMP. There's a ton more that you can use, but basically these will show all of the different parameters that you can attach to those objects. Or basically, like, I guess it's built as a class, and then whatever that class has within it, it will show you those attributes. So pretty useful. Okay, now these are commands for sending packets. So the alternative to this is to build a socket and craft the packet byte by byte, and that's really tedious. So it's actually really nice that this does all that for you. It builds the socket, it shoves the packet in there, and just really takes care of a lot of the more strenuous activities of working with packets. So I believe that so there's send and sendp here, and I believe that the difference here is that send works at layer 3, and sendp works at layer 2. But both, in my experience, both of them will work pretty much interchangeably for sending packets. I typically use send, but I mean, they've both worked for me. even in cases where it would have been weird to use a layer 3 or a layer 2. So just keep that in mind. They're pretty interchangeable, but I would just stick with send. So send IP, this is just basically sending an empty or a generic IP packet. This is sending and those actually should be send, not send P, but again, like I said, they're pretty interchangeable. So anyway, so send IP, and then this is the destination. So basically you're telling it, okay, what IP address that you want to include, and send the packet to that. This is a little bit more complicated command, and we're actually smashing different headers together and kind of building our own custom packet like we talked about earlier. But so we have an Ethernet where we're specifying a fake source MAC. We have an IP packet or an IP header that we are specifying the source and the destination, and then we're specifying the ports, or the UDP ports that we're using. And then we're storing all of that in a variable called X. And you may be thinking, well, Spencer, there's a lot of different stuff in the Ethernet header, the IP header, and the UDP header that you haven't specified. Well, the cool thing about Scapy is it will set the best defaults it can find based on like the configurations within your computer, and what it can find, and it will just automatically go and pre-fill those other pieces of the header for you. So it makes packet generation way easier, because if it didn't do that, you would have to go through and manually set every bit or every byte so that it would complete the full packet header. Otherwise, it would fail. So this makes it really nice when you're working with packets. Okay, and then we've already talked about the send function, but now instead of just sending or actually building the packet inside of the send command, we can actually just substitute in the variable and send out the packet we've already pre-built. All right, and now we're talking about sniffing. So we want to actually observe or record all the packets that are coming on the wire. So the sniff.show function basically is just going to sniff indefinitely, or it's just going to keep gathering packets indefinitely until you hit like Control-C and quit. And then once you do, it will show in the console in very simple terms like each packet that you've collected. So fairly basic. And then you can say, okay, I only want 5 packets. So basically you're sniffing the first 5 packets that come, and you're going to store it in, really it could be any variable. I just called this caps. But and then once you have it in this variable called caps, you can do caps.summary, which will print out a 1-line summary of each of the packets in this variable. And then let's say you only want the first packet in that variable. So for example, there would have been 5 packets in caps, and we want the first one. So we can do caps, the first member of the array, 1, or the first packet, and then .show, and that'll show a much more comprehensive list, or a much more detailed list of each of the packet parameters. Okay, and we can sniff and filter. So basically we can filter for the protocol, we can filter for the port. Like for example, you could say TCP and port 80, or UDP and port 53, or whatever the case is. You can sniff and filter, or filter only packets based on those conditions. Another useful one is filtering by interface. So say you have multiple interfaces in your computer, or you have you're in an enterprise network and you are really only using wired connections, and you have maybe 3 different ETH interfaces. Then you can specify, I only want to collect traffic on this one or that one or a particular one. So that's pretty helpful as well. So this is called wrapcap or rpcap. But basically it will wrap a sniff. So basically we sniffed 5 packets into caps, okay? And then it will write those packets, or wrap those packets, into a pcap file, and which you can store. I call it testy. You can store this pcap file in whatever the working directory is, it will generate that file as a pcap with this name. And then if we want to reload that pcap file that we just made, or really any pcap file, we can say sniff offline and then the path to that particular file, and it will load it into a variable so we can continue to manipulate those packets even offline. So some pretty cool functionalities here. And then finally, there's as compared to like Wireshark, there's not the visualizations of the packets aren't as great. So unless you use some outside libraries. So in this case, like this will show you the raw bytes of the packet. This will kind of print them out in almost like a Wireshark style, like very structured rows, columns, like ordering of bytes. This will list out all of the field values. This will give you that one-line summary. This is the more developed view, or basically a more in-depth summary. And then and really the interesting ones here are these, the PS dump and PDF dump. These will actually print out a PDF. Almost, it's similar to Wireshark. Actually, and this is cool because it actually will point you to the particular like section of bytes that each variable reference, like the source will point to the bytes in the file. You'll see what I'm talking about later, but these are actually really nice, although they're kind of a pain to get working. But they kind of improve the visualization and the functionality of Scapy. Okay, I just want to briefly show the references, which will be important, and these will be linked in the description of the video, so don't worry about looking at them here, but I'm just going to show them briefly. So this one, it was really great for figuring out how to sniff packets. This one was a really good website for sending and receiving, or working with sending and receiving strategies for packets. This is a nice general video to get you going. And then this is the scary long Scapy documentations. So just pause for 1 second. Okay. And then these are the two visualization packages. I used MikTeX because it was a way more compact file. This is like 4 gigs, I think. This is only like a couple 100 megabytes. So I used this one. This one worked. I was working on a Mac. So I would recommend this. Try it. If it doesn't work, go and try to install TextLive. But if you want to run those more complicated visuals or more in-depth visuals, you are going to need one of these 2 packages. So just keep that in mind. Okay, guys, that's it for this video. I'm going to hop off, and we will get started in the next one, and we'll start working with these in the command line and seeing what happens from there. Thanks again, guys. If you enjoyed the content, please consider giving me a like and a subscribe so I can continue to grow and produce better content. And if you really enjoyed it, you might even consider buying me a coffee, in a link in the video description. But if you don't do any of those things, at least just please give me some feedback in the comments and let me know how I'm doing, and if anything's unclear or if there's anything else I can improve on. But thank you, guys, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.